Welcome to the Heart of Money podcast, where we discuss the impact that money has on every area of your life and where you can learn to make smarter money decisions. Join our conversation as we discuss our past experiences, talk about how to make better money management choices, and in the end, make a commitment to being weird. We are back finally. It's been 3 years it seems, divided by 24 months. Something down that line. How are you, Mr. Wessler?
Oh, I'm good. I'm still big and you're still John Rich, right? John Rich, you look like John Rich. I can't tell.
This was like after we ended. I did this the very end of February. I don't think you've really seen me since then. So this is the new look for you, just for you.
Yeah, just for me. And like we talked about earlier, I still haven't changed. I've added about 10 pounds, but aside from that, I haven't changed. So,
But it's all from the chest down, right? Because I can't see any different, in your face.
no. It starts right here. It starts right here. That's where it all
So
is.
for those of you who
on
are
camera.
not watching this on YouTube and are just listening to us, I now have a handlebar mustache. Bob now has a second chin. And we are
Oh, you're so
back
kind.
again. Yeah, I'm trying to be nice to you. Since we've been off the air for so long now that I feel like I have to, just gradually ease into the teasing and to the camaraderie that we share, or this just isn't going to feel quite right. So we're back. We're live. We're here again. I'm excited. It's been I don't know about you, but it's been a crazy 6 months over here. What's life been like for you?
It flew by. I really don't even know what's happened. Not much has changed in my life, but I know that your story is completely different.
There's been a lot changed in my life the last 6 months, which is why we haven't been on
grew
here
a
for a
mustache.
while.
That's what it is. It took you 6 months to grow that mustache. That's why we have not been on air.
Yeah, I had to get polished and get pretty, and it takes time to look good and stay that way.
High maintenance.
Well, it is true. Yeah, we've been off the air for about 6 months now. You and I kind of decided. I guess I decided, and you went along with it. Back in February, had some really big changes coming up in my life with some new job opportunities and new family responsibilities, and decided, hey, it's smart just to kind of take a break from the show to focus on other things that are they're not maybe more pressing, but they were going to take more time and more energy and effort, and just we couldn't really split focus and couldn't devote to the show like we needed to with everything else going on. So we decided to take a break. But hey, we finally have got things ironed out and got into the new routine. I got a new job. I got a new baby. He just came about 9 days ago. So as we're recording this here on August 7th, I've got a 9-day-old baby, number 3. So that is a fantastic new addition to our family. So yeah, life has changed a lot for me in the past 6 months. But it's been a lot of good changes. And Bob, I am really excited to get back into the show to visit with you. We've got some fantastic episodes lined up as we get into this, and I look forward to more great guest episodes as well. I think we're gonna change the show up a little bit, just because you and I are both busy, and we want to devote to this show the best way that we can. So previously we've been doing weekly shows for the last 69 episodes up till now. It's hard to believe it's been that many. But starting with this episode, we're actually going to go to a every 2-week show, so we can have the time to devote to it and to really have good content for our audience. So folks, as you're tuning back into the show, you are probably going to hear a little bit less of us, or at least a little bit less often of us. Hopefully we're still going to have the same great conversations that you enjoy, but it's going to be slightly less frequent, but just as good content, just good a conversation. So Bob, I'm excited. I'm glad to be back in here and glad to be visiting with you again. And I'm excited to get back into things. I don't know if you're as excited as I am, but because you've been patiently waiting for the interviews to come back, so hopefully you are geared up and ready to go again.
I'm excited to find out who this new host and co-host are that are going to keep things so exciting and fresh new content. I can't wait to see who that is that's going to be bringing that. So, oh wait, we're supposed to move into this slow. Is that what you were saying? I just tried to pick up where we left off, and
I gave you 6 months to get ready. You should be just primed up, polished up,
I
eager beaver.
yeah, and it's going to show too. It is. It just might be too
Right.
much.
Dot, dot, dot. Wait for it.
And boom goes the dynamite.
Oh, it is going to be fun, though. I mean, as we're getting ready for episode 70 here, I wanted to bring you on for this episode coming back. Obviously, you're the co-host. This episode 70 was a guest show that I recorded way back in February, and just we had to hang on to it. But it's perfect timing because it's going to kick off a 3-part series that we're going to do here in August on tithing, on generosity, on the spiritual element of money. It's something that we've kind of hit on before in recent or in past episodes, but we're going to really dive into it. But I'm really excited to have my guest for this show is going to be Randy Bowen. And unfortunately, you were not able to be on the interview with him, but I'm really excited to share that story that he has and the conversation we have around that. And then next episode, you and I are going to jump right back into it, talking about tithing, about money, about all those fun things. So that's why I wanted to to bring you back in as we get this show started again before we jump into Randy Bowen's interview. But is there anything else that you want to say before we get started with the next episode?
It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to it, and it's going to be a whole new ball game with you having an extra kiddo around, and you're going to learn some new lessons,
No
and
kidding.
we're going to figure these things out as we go, and like you said, continue to bring new content and let us pontificate on the facts of life, I guess.
Awesome. Well, let's get right to it. Here's my interview with Randy Bowen. Randy, so glad to have you on the show today. Welcome to the Heart of Money. How are you, my friend?
I am doing really well. Thank you so much for having me. I really am looking forward to this conversation.
I am too. This is something that we haven't talked about a lot in the past, but it's something that I think is deserving of a really good, deep conversation. I know that you have had experience, doing research into generosity and giving and just the components of that. But before we get into that, tell folks just a little bit about yourself, about your business, about your background, and how you got to be where you are today.
For sure. So my background is simply I was someone who grew up with parents that actually were good with their money. And the funny thing is, oftentimes when you grow up with parents who are good with their money, oftentimes you are not.
Yep.
And I would say it's just one of those things where you almost it's almost like a rebellion thing where you're like, no, I don't want to be good with my money. Why do I need to be good with my money? So I found that I was good with my money up to a certain point, but then when I went out on my own, I just didn't really care to do the proper steps, budget, make sure I had enough to live on, all of that stuff. It just didn't really compute when I left home, kind
Yeah.
of. And so I found myself in a lot of debt. I found myself in a car loan that was just, it wasn't too expensive to handle, but it definitely slowed down where I wanted to be in my life at that point in
Mm-hmm.
time. So I found myself in debt. I found myself actually being able to get out of debt using, I know you know him, Dave Ramsey's plan,
There you go.
and just kind of helping to walk the steps there. And then I just realized hey, if I'm struggling with this, there's got to be other people out there that are struggling to deal with their finances. And that's what got me into, I call it legacy coaching, because we're not just teaching people how to deal with their finances, we're helping them build a legacy for them and their family. So it's
Yeah.
much more than just the dollars and cents of finance. It's actually getting into what disciplines are we missing and what disciplines can we create for ourselves that will ultimately help us win in our finances, but also in our life.
I love it. Yeah, that the legacy
Yeah.
that we can leave to those around us, I think it oftentimes goes farther than we can even imagine, especially whenever we're in that moment of being in debt or not having the financial, capacity to really live and give. The idea of legacy is almost a foreign concept. So I love that you help people find that path and their journey and really, grab onto what could happen if you became financially independent. How could you affect those around you? That's really neat. Now I know that you have you've written a book. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah.
So and this book I think is about generosity and about giving. What led you to write that book, to have that project, and what did you learn from that as you were completing that study?
So the first thing I learned about generosity is just simply like I mean there was periods in my life where I wasn't consistently giving, but when I actually started to like work on my finances, I just committed to giving all the way through. No matter
Mm,
what struggles or trials I was having, I just committed to giving all throughout that time. It seemed like it was going to slow down my process, and I
mhm.
was aware of that, but I committed to giving the whole entire time. And so when I was able to have time to, and I was actually on board to being like, hey, you know what, like I could I could possibly write a book on this, and it got to the point where I did have some free time, so I started to write. And I've always based my financial like concepts off of a priority list. And when you get the priority list right, then ultimately you can start to win in your finances and
Yeah.
then also in your life. So I try to like take a picture. So I'm a Christian, by the way, and so like I'm a big believer in giving just in a general sense.
Hmm.
But I try to look at it as say like, okay, like I understand I have different convictions than other people do. Why is giving important to the common person? So that's
Yeah.
the first question I had to like really answer for myself. And I came up with kind of this kind of guideline. So my non-negotiables in my way that I deal with my finances is it's called Give, Live, Save, and that's the title of the book. If you're curious,
Okay.
it's called Give, Live,
Perfect.
Save, and it's your non-negotiables, and that's what you start with.
Hmm.
And the reason why you start with giving is because it forces you to live on less you make.
Yeah.
So beyond any of the spiritual elements, besides the more content you are, you're more content you are when you give, you compare less when you give. Besides all of those other benefits, what it does in your finances is it actually pushes you to live on less you make. It makes that switch in your mind that says, "Oh, I have to live on less than I make. I have to live on say 90% now instead of your full 100%. We
Yeah.
have to make this work," which ultimately makes helps you sacrifice easier in other areas of your life. It makes it a lot easier to cut off that subscription when you tell yourself I'm doing this and this is going to happen and this is a priority in my life.
Yeah.
So I've always found that when people can actually see that they can live on less than they make, then they start to think bigger and they start to
Hmm.
think, well, what else can I like cut or what else can I like do to improve my financial situation? Can I actually pay down this debt a little bit more? Can I actually make more money? Can I
Hmm.
actually do all these other things? And the answer is yes, you can, but you've got to get in that headspace first. And that's why I believe that giving is so important because it forces you to go there. You have no options. You
Right.
have to, like, if you're giving, you have to just deal with that money is gone. It's not like savings where you can pull savings back
Hmm.
and it's like still your safety net. No, no, no. Giving has no safety net. You give that money away, it's gone. You
Yeah.
have to work with what you got.
So I'm really curious because I'm sure that folks listening to this are saying, well, that makes sense in context, but I don't have the money, period. And I'm trying to get my debt paid off, and we're barely even making it in a month. We're living paycheck to paycheck. We don't know how we're going to get our debt paid off, much less even save for ourselves or give outside of that. But like you, I believe that that's the wrong attitude and the wrong mindset to truly win with this area, because it's not a we don't have the money, it's where is the money, right? It's that realignment of your priorities, of your convictions, of your decisions. And as soon as you find the proper alignment for that, everything starts to fall into place. What would be your advice based upon what you've learned and what you've studied in how someone can get out of that mindset of scarcity or not having the money, period, or not even feeling like you can take care of what's right in front of you, much less give it out there, to then see if I give first, everything else will follow in accordance? Because that can be a really big shift for someone to say, well, that makes sense, but I don't see how I can personally do that. What advice do you have for someone to be able to make that shift in their mind to believe that it's actually possible?
So I would say first and foremost, if you're not budgeting with your priorities listed first, you are doing yourself a big, big disservice. If you're not budgeting in general, you're doing yourself a big disservice. But
Yeah.
what I found is the majority of the budgets that come across, like when I'm sitting across the table with someone, is they pay their bills first. Then after their bills are paid, they make sure their family is cared for second. And then they make sure that all of their other essentials, I'm using air
Right.
quotes, like their Netflix, their Disney Plus, all of that stuff, all their other expenses get
That
lumped in,
kids
and
have
then
to have.
they have to. They have to have the best, because who knows when that pitcher is going to be judged like 20 years down the road. You just don't know. You got to have that stuff. So then they go through the expenses, and then I call it the leftover budget, because
Yeah.
then there's two categories that are just always left to the end. They're the leftovers. If there's anything left at the end of the month, these two categories get hit. The first category is savings. Okay, if we have $10 left over this month, we'll put it into savings. And then the last category is giving. So giving is often the last category that people even think of. And if you're setting your budget up like this, you're setting yourself up to fail, because ultimately, in order to win in your finances, you have to prioritize your finances. You have to put what you care about, your non-negotiables, first. You got to put them first. So that's why I encourage that you put giving first, then you put living first. This is your family stuff. Make sure there's food on the table. Make sure there's a car that you can drive. Make sure that like the lights are on, your mortgage is caught up, because if you have a family, you will know that like if there's stress around your family, you're gonna make some really poor financial decisions. It's just how it works.
Right, exactly.
If you're stressed out, chances are, and you and your family are stressed out, chances are you're going to make some very critical errors, especially in your finances. So you give first because it forces you to live on less you make, and it reprioritizes your mind to think something bigger than yourself. You create a space for your family to be protected, because your family is your biggest asset that you have. You are your biggest asset that you have. So therefore, make sure you're cared for, because I don't know about you, but like we were just talking about, I've made some really, really stupid financial decisions just because I was stressed.
Yeah.
Like I'll tell you a quick story. Like my car, it had a wheel bearing go on it, and I was financially stressed, and so I ended up just like fixing the wheel bearing and ended up trading that car in. and buying a brand new car. Like that was purely out of stress
Right,
that happened.
Made
There was
no
no
sense
other
at all.
reason. I did not need a new car. Yeah, but I'm just like, oh, this makes total sense
Uh-huh.
because the repair on the car was at the time like $300, and that was gonna be my car payment.
Right.
So I don't know, it made sense to me. $40,000 car later, right?
Goodness.
Like, made sense to me. So, I will say, I will take a step back here, and I will say that like I'm understand like I am very empathetic to people who will go through this process and still be like, "Oh man, like I still don't have enough.
Mhm.
I've done what you've asked. I've like reprioritized my budget and I don't have enough, or maybe I can't give that full 10%,
Mhm.
which I recommend. But like I might be able to do 5." And then I say, go for it,
Yeah.
do 5. But there's another element to it. Like, don't just put, oh, I think I can probably only do 5 and put 5 first,
Mhm.
5% of giving first. No, stretch yourself. Like, you can always pull that number back a little bit, but stretch yourself. If you think you can only do 5, put 10 on there
Mhm.
and then work down your budget. And if you find that, hey, we can't do 10, then dial it back to 7. You might be able to do 7. That's still 2% more than what you thought you could do.
Right.
It's amazing when you prioritize your spending properly, how much money you can actually find and how much willing you are to cut in different areas.
Yeah. I think, I mean, we could look at giving from a variety of angles. We could look at it from, the tithe that you give to your church. We could look at it from just being generous in general to those around you. If you see someone that's in need, you give money, or
Yeah.
you buy somebody, McDonald's, whatever the case is. We can look at making,
Mm-hmm.
intentional contributions to a charity or nonprofit. I mean, there's several different areas that I think you could zone in on and say, you know, and in my opinion, each of those areas takes a little bit of a different mindset to evaluate how you're going to handle your money in that regard, right? Because maybe if we're just going to give to a nonprofit, we may be good with giving, 5%. That may just be an acceptable amount, or $20, isn't necessarily a percentage of your income. But if you want to give $20 to a stranger because you feel led to, that is still being generous. So I think that we can
Yeah, for sure.
we can go down any of these different avenues, but whenever I come back to the core concept of percentage aside, amount aside, even reason aside, there has to be this bigger mental picture, and you alluded to this earlier, but I want to dig into this a little bit. There has to be this bigger mental picture of not necessarily how is this impacting me and my family, but how is this benefiting those around me, and which in turn obviously then is going to benefit me and my family. Because as we all know, whenever we
Mm-hmm.
give, there is a definite in the right situation, the right context, everything else, there is a definite enjoyment and satisfaction by the giver. The saying is better to give than to receive. That's just a common understanding.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to be in the right mental space and with the right intention for that to truly take effect and happen. So, one of the things we like to talk about on the show is just the psychological and the philosophical elements of financial management. When you're talking to someone
Okay.
and let's, whether the money is there or not, whether they want to give to their church or just to be generous or to be charitable, whatever their desire is, how do you guide them to see that bigger picture and have that initial desire to know, if I give of myself, I will be blessed in return and I will feel the satisfaction, and that is why I should give, not because it's a requirement and I should figure out how to make it happen, because that's just a natural good state to be in that has bigger impact, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it all starts with just the understanding that if you were to line up 5 people, or let's just say 6 people, and half of them were givers and half of them weren't, I would say that chances are really good, and studies have kind of shown this, that the givers are actually nicer people,
Yeah,
just in general. Like,
definitely.
so when you look at it that way, you can see that there's benefits in giving, because you're, I don't know, it's freeing.
Hmm.
For me, like, it takes a while for sure, but it's freeing when you learn that first off, you can live on less than you make, but second, when you give freely without any expectation of what you give to, there's that sense of calm over you
Hmm.
that you just don't know about until you actually give. I I heard this one time, and it was, like, you can receive everything you want. Someone can, like, give you everything you want, and you will still be dissatisfied.
Hmm.
But if you give something away to someone in, like, need, or just someone in general, like just buying a gift for someone, or just simply like paying for a single mom who just had their tire blow out and they just can't afford to fix it, right? Like, you give money in that direction, man, it does something to your heart.
Hmm.
Like it's so extravagantly more rewarding when you give than when you receive. Like, you can receive the whole entire world and feel empty, and you can give a $20 bill and feel 100% fulfilled.
Yeah.
So, in terms of switching people's mindsets, I would say it takes time, and it takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of trust to get people to see it actually go through, because it's not a 1 month
Yeah.
thing, like, wherever you're giving to, however much you're giving to, it's not a 1 month thing. It takes time. You're not going to see it over the course of a week. You're going to see it in probably 3 to 6 months. You might see a little bit of that impact, but you probably won't see the full effect till 10 years later.
Mm.
Honestly, giving is just one of those things where it takes time to grow, and that's why I encourage people to stretch themselves
Hmm.
in the giving aspect, because you see it more when you stretch yourself.
Yeah.
You're psychologically, especially when you give based on the fact that, like, you're barely surviving to begin with, when you give away, I'm not gonna lie, your brain has a panic attack.
Right.
everything everything you do going forward after you give first,
Hmm.
your brain is, and it's just simply trying to protect
Yeah.
you. That's the psychology of it. Your brain is just simply trying to protect you, and so you're not going to see all those impulse buys when you walk into the store.
Mm.
Or if you are, your brain is going to remember, oh no, you can't do this.
Right.
You gave our money away. How dare you? Like, that kind of
Yeah.
mentality. Your brain does that. Your brain's just protecting you, right? And so you're less likely to overspend. You're less likely to impulse buy. You're less likely to be so fully consumed on comparing to everyone around you,
Hmm.
because you're so consumed with, I gotta make this work. I gotta make this lower income work, and your brain is just helping you. I mean, your brain is saying something along the lines of, "You're an idiot. You gave our money away. We can't do this. But hey, I'm here to help
Yeah.
you, right? Like, I'm going to help shelter you so that you don't overspend, because we have to.
Right.
You gave me no choice," kind of thing. So I think that's a psychological thing, but I don't know. It's small
Yeah.
steps, is what it is.
Do
It's
you
looking at your budget, reprioritizing your budget. Sorry.
do you feel like, 'cause your comments there just made me kind of think about flipping this whole attitude, because a lot of times I think we come in and we defend against giving because of our bills and our expenses and our savings goals. But the way you position it right there sounds like giving can be a defense against our overspending and our bills and everything else. And
Yep.
actually, by giving, we have both immediate protection and obviously some long term protection, because we're building that that character and those seeds of long term blessing. Um, do you think that in certain cases, and you can say no if you disagree with this, but do you think in certain cases people should implement a giving strategy for the sole purpose of being a buffer against impulse decisions, and help them be more conscious about money management? If they know we simply do not have the money now because we are giving, do you think that's an acceptable practice, or is that maybe putting the wrong emphasis on giving in your mind?
No, I think that that's 100% acceptable. I think that especially in the consumer mindset world we live in, we gotta fight back with our impulses. We have to. Otherwise, we will we'll nickel and dime ourselves to death,
Yeah.
right? Like people don't realize that, they spend so much money stress eating. They spend so
Yeah.
much money with these small little incremental purchases that they don't see the impact of. We gotta make an impact the other way, and it's almost like taking up space. I haven't talked about it like this before, but I'm gonna try to walk this through. It's almost like taking up space, right? Like if you're constantly having just enough money or maybe just a little bit more than what you need, you're you're constantly like just keeping it that way. You're constantly consuming that little bit more. You're constantly like spending everything that you have. Whereas if you fill that space with giving, then you're ultimately saying, okay, like no, I can't, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that giving impulse, or sorry, that spending impulse goes down because it's consumed, or you've taken that 10% whatever percentage away from your impulses to go spending.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I never thought of that way either. But I mean, it's almost like making a mental budget, right? There's only so much money
Yep.
in the budget to allocate. Where do you prioritize? How much do you put in there, et cetera, et cetera. And when that money's gone, it's gone. Well, and the same thing, kind of infiltrates within our mind, within our habits. There's only so much mental capacity, only so much time, only so much energy to devote to certain things, and kind of the same, line of thinking there of if you are focused on just spending and saving, then that's where all your energy goes. But as soon as you switch over to, okay, we're going to now
That's right.
give, then all of a sudden your energy and your mind shifts over to the giving part, and there's less energy to devote to the saving and spending, because you have kind of split what's available there, and achieved a positive, you know, result really by doing that. So that's really interesting. I'm glad that you kind of brought that up and talked about. 'Cause I've never thought about that before, but definitely,
Well, me
yeah,
neither.
it
So
just kind of separates that. And I was trying to think. There was something that you mentioned there a minute ago. So um, obviously you and I are both believers. We both give to our church. We both just give out of generosity. And I know that everyone that listens to this show
yeah,
may or may not follow that practice, whatever. But we all want to be generous. I mean, we all have some level of wanting to be generous, whether it's to our friends, our family, strangers, whatever the case is. Um, what's the best way for someone to start being generous if they've never done it before? Whether they want to give to their church for the first time, whether they want to just start giving money at the end of the year to a charity, or they just want to give out that $20 to someone at the grocery store. For someone who has never taken part in this activity, what's that first step that you want to encourage them to do to get into that practice?
well, we talked about the being intentional with your budget, what you put on your what you put first and prioritize as a non-negotiable in your budget matters. So I won't go back into that, but I will say that there's a couple rules that I talk to people about when they are actually wanting to give. The first one is you got to be intentional with your giving. So whether it is saying 10% is going here or this much money is going here, you got to know what you're giving to. Because again, one of the other things that I found when people do give is often they don't give with the right heart. And when I say that, it's not that they don't give to, be manipulative, but oftentimes they give with a different picture in mind than what that organization is going to do with that money, that kind of thing. And so what I've always encouraged people to do is be intentional with where they're giving to. So if you do want to get started on your giving journey, don't just blindly give. Don't just be like, oh, well, I've been attending this church, or I've been attending this nonprofit for the last 5 years. This is where I should give. You might actually be surprised that you don't actually want to give your money there, right? Yeah. So I think you've got to be intentional to actually look into the places that you're giving to. So say, for instance, it is a church. Like, are they spending your money wisely? Are they furthering the kingdom based off your money? Are their financials in order? Yeah. Are they being wise with their money? Are they being good stewards? All of that stuff, right? Like, is the staff consuming 90% of the budget and 10% is left for like keeping the lights on, right? Like all of this stuff, like, be intentional with that, seek it out. But then when you've looked at it and you're like, nope, this is a place I want to give. This is my starting point. This is where I want to feed into. They're doing good work. Whatever the case is, then give freely. Give freely, understanding that, yes, they might do something that you don't agree with your money, but is it against, but if you've vetted them, if you've gone through the process, you will know that their goals, their big picture are where it needs to be. It's just the little, it might be just a different direction than what you would take with your money. And oftentimes if you're so focused on the industry that you gave to or the place that you gave to, you might find and want to pull that money back or like threaten to like not be donating to them because you don't believe in where they're putting where they are using your money. Yeah. So what I encourage is, as long as it's not against your core values, and as long as they're not doing something that's like completely opposite to what they actually say they believe in, give freely. Whatever it is. If it's a soup kitchen, if it's a nonprofit, if it's a rec league, whatever it is, give freely as often as you can when you vetted them in the first place. Because chances are good, if you feel and you haven't vetted a place and you give blindly and you realize that, oh no, that money's going to this and like that's just horrible and how can they do this, and it might be horrible, it might be the worst thing in the world. Yeah. You might have just given a $20 bill to a snake, right? Like you never know. Right. Yep. and so when you do that, then you set yourself up to fail, because then who wants to give after that? Right. Nobody wants to give after that. So set yourself up in a way of saying, okay, I want to just start. This is where I believe I should start. I vetted them. They look good. Their financial status looks good. They look like they're stewarding their money well. All of this stuff, you vet them really, really closely. But then give freely, because the big picture is what matters. It doesn't really matter how you get there. It's the big picture that matters.
I love that. I love that whole concept.
So yeah, just get started.
Yeah, and the freely element of that. I mean, I've told people, until you start giving, you'll understand how freeing it really is, how liberating, how fun it really is. And as soon as you start, you can't stop. It just becomes a second nature. You cannot get enough of it. So I love that you shared that concept of just doing it freely without, hesitation, without restriction, just being immersed in it. I think that is a fantastic concept to walk away with. Where can people?
Yeah, and I think when you. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna add one thought to that. Like, I think that, like you said, I think when you start to give, because you're becoming more content and you're realizing that you can live on less than you make, you stop comparing yourself to those around you, and ultimately, that makes you look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And when you look at the bigger picture, that bigger picture might be, hey, we actually could be giving more. We could be making a bigger impact with the giving if we up our giving.
Yeah. Whole nother level of fun there, man. That's one thing that we could talk for hours on this, because you and I both love generosity and love just helping people and being in that mode. So I know that we could continue forever on this. But where can people, first of all, get your book? And secondly, where can they get connected with you?
For sure. Okay, so you can get my book at Barnes Noble. You can get it at Amazon. You can get it. I forget what other place you can give it, but it's readily available. I went through a publisher, and they've done a good job with that. If you're in Canada, you can get it at Indigo. You can, if you're in Regina, you can come to me and I will give you a copy
and deliver.
But it's available. There's an ebook out there and everything. So Amazon's probably the easiest, just because it's a click and go kind of thing. Yep. But it is in brick and mortar stores and everything like that. Awesome. So as terms of like myself, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. It's Finding Financial Hope. That's all of the hashtags with all them, or all the, I don't know, handles. Like, they all got weird names to them. But if you just type in at Finding Financial Hope, you'll find me. I do educational videos on TikTok. I don't know, you might find me funny, you might not, and that's perfectly fine. I just try to educate people. You can also go to my website, findingfinancialhope.com, and just send me a note. It's not fully set up yet, but I'm doing one-on-one coaching there, and you don't need much to set that up. So just send me a note in there, send me your information, and I can talk you through and see what happens. So
awesome. Well, Randy, it's been so much fun for me to have this conversation with you and to pick your brain a little bit, get your insights. I've been looking forward to this. So really appreciate you being on the show today, sharing your stories, sharing your passion, and I'm excited to continue the conversation again in the future with you.